Okay, so Danny's problems number 4. Actually, what we have here is sci-fi sword. This is the actual great sword for training. What we want to do is get it set up for UVs, get it set up to where there's 3-dimensional aspects throughout the piece. Right here is a single planar object, polygon, same here. So we want to add some weight to this, and so we can get it set for UVs and reduce some of the poly counts. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and get it into a, to reduce it down to pretty much the lowest common denominator. And that's basically going to put some symmetries and just delete some meshes. So first off, try to get your scene clean. It helps when you're organizing things. Let's see, top, left, front. Sweet, there we go. All right. So what I'm going to do is start deleting things that we don't need to worry about right now. Getting in here, make sure I get half of the geometry, and then hit delete. And then, okay, so we've got a little bit of mismatch already happening a little bit. That's no big deal. I can still get around that. I'll select half of what I can. Deselect, okay, we'll delete, deselect that, deselect that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the, check the work. Okay, delete that. So here we are, pretty much the lowest common denominator. And what I want to do first, let's see, I think we got some things we can weld here. Unweld. We started getting the cuts here, and that's the right direction. So let's go ahead and kind of take that a little further. Is there a thickness that happens along this edge here on this little guard piece? It's just a little, like this. It's not a blade. It's more like an actual metal, like a guard type scenario, right? Okay. So let's see. Did you weld all this? You did. Sweet. So let's detach it. Attach. Not there. I have to go here. So I'm going to detach it. I'm going to detach it as an element, leave it in the as an object. Just kind of slide it off a little bit. And this is already a separate element. All right, I see what you're doing. So this is the right kind of idea what you're doing. And what we could have done at this point, and we still can, is to kind of just pull an extrusion and then attach it to the big piece that kind of creates that framework. Let's clean this blade up a little bit. Oops. Weld it. And then we'll remove some edges. Yeah. Hit backspace. I'm going to get rid of these vertices. Keep that one. I keep that one and that one because that works with the shape that you have here. Let's get rid of these right there. And I'm just do a quick cut to get some things cleaned up. I want to go ahead and add this one here. And then cut again. All right, so what we want to get at this point, I can actually reapply this piece to it. Because this is the right direction for sure. Really all you needed to do to make this shape really, oopsie, and extrude. To make this shape extrude the way you want it to, all we need to do is just basically extrude off of this place and then extrude the very thin edges and you'll get that shape that you want. But the trick still is coming into the actual unwrapping it all. And I know this is actually going to be it's going to get eaten by the symmetry, but I'm going to put it there because it gives me a little bit of a platform to build off of. Scale that flat. Okay. So that makes this, where I'm at makes sense, right?
You disconnected like the single polygon, just flat, since it's not actually extruded anywhere, it's just a flat plane. You disconnected that from the peak of the guard, you disconnected the sword from the guard, and after you cut it from ports.
Yeah, and then cutting it into angles to allow me to find some of the shape that you're already working with. So there's the curvature that matches this shape here. I'm still using the shape that you built as a reference, and I probably still will be able to apply it. But I think what I'm going to end up doing is actually just doing an extrude off of this selection right here. So what I do here at this point is I just do a quick extrude. Where's my extrude? I'm in 5, that's fine. There we go. I'll have an extrude there. Extrude. And we don't need to go that far. It's just a little bitty thing. And then from here, I get this edge, and this edge. Oh wait, I forgot those pieces too. I'm gonna grab just the one that actually will be flaring straight out and getting that squared away, and then I can work on getting the rest of this shape because that'll all match the same size. Does that make sense? Do extrude here. And so here's where I want to kind of start flattening it out and starting to kind of teeter to the left a little bit, so I'm going to straighten that down a little bit because now all I do is just got to move that the way I want it to. And from here I can actually grab this and continue the shape down the line with just a bevel, and I'm set to go with that shape. Not a bevel, let's do extrude. And from there I'm just going to go into the border. And I can just hold shift and hold shift. And I want to rotate that to where it actually matches the direction that it's working towards. Right? So it matches the actual angle of attack. Same with these. So that shape's coming along just as pretty as it can be. Alright? At this point, I could consider where I want to lose some geometry and where I want to kind of think about tapering this down. But on the same note, maybe there's something. Is there an attachment here, or is it kind of just float like it's?
It kind of just cuts through the blade.
Okay. Does it connect to the other side if we're symmetrying it? So I actually could just take that a little further and extend that out basically to this per se, right? Okay. So we're going to have problem children over here because we've got some geometry over here, but that's not a bad issue to have. The symmetry will take care of that problem for us pretty damn quickly. Looks like I'm missing some geometry. It's okay. Let's see what happens. Symmetry. And I'm not going to leave it as the symmetry on there. I'm going to have to actually get to the UVs, but it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to do the UVs when it's a single small quarter than when it's all set up. But I need to test out and make sure everything is at least looking the way I'm wanting it to. So I need to bring that connection in, right? In the top of the blade, right?
Can you collapse it at the top?
I can, but to be honest, I want to kind of take my time towards it and actually see if I can actually just get the shape a little bit more controlled, because it's the symmetry is going to weld that all for us. So if I just bring that a little tighter or change that threshold, it's a weld threshold. Let's see, a little tighter. Boom. And now it's a single object. And I just do the same thing down here to fix that up a little bit, tighten that up. So there's your basic shape, and that's a must. And you see, a lot of it's already kind of fixing yourself. There's going to be areas here you need to address. Everyone, look up here real quick. I want to. Y'all have seen me do the. You've seen me add symmetry over and over and over to an object to get something like this, right? You've seen me go from here, which is a quarter of a sword, to getting the whole sword. And the symmetry has overlaps, and so it's going to create some artifacts in geometry that we're going to have to be aware of. So if I go to Edit Poly, I go to Vertex, it's really a good idea to go into the wireframe view to see if you can find areas. Hey, Sydney, does this look like it's going to be an end gun right there?
Yes.
She'll find them. But you see what I'm saying? It's like there's areas here we need to kind of address and fix. So be conscientious of that. And the way I would go about that actually is I'd take that Edit Poly off, take that symmetry off, and fix it here. All right, so I go in here, I can start looking at where my intersections are going to be in this certain area and making sure I fix things like this, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? So definitely take your time, add a symmetry, look at the Edit Poly, see if you see those if you see them, don't sweat it. Because like this is a complex piece of geometry. It's got lots of very difficult angles, and it has this big gap in here, which has been a problem for a couple of weeks for you, right? At least, right? Yeah. So, but we still got to unwrap it. So I just want you to see how the symmetry doesn't fix everything perfectly. You kind of have to go at it and address it as you go. That being said, y'all still here listening to me, right? That being said, what I can do is I can fix all those things, all those symmetries right all the way up, and then basically delete all that geometry again because everything has been cleaned up because I went back and fixed it after every symmetry. Does that make sense? Like for instance, one of the areas that we have is we have a triangle pole type scenario, and then we have a vertex down here, which means that continuation is happening even though the actual break of the geometry is here. So our geometry goes that direction, and this one will go this direction. And so this segment here is critical, and there's a lot of vertices here, and then they converge down here, which means this is a massive end-gun, and this is a massive end-gun. That makes sense? So what I'll do in symmetry, and then Edit Poly, so I'll go ahead and collapse those, and then I will collapse these two. I will drag that up there and target weld it, right? And then I'll go back and select all this geometry here and delete it. Because now, once my pivot point is set up here, it's always going to symmetry of that vertex already established. Does that make sense? Because the symmetry is going to be there every time. Now, one more caveat to that. By the way, that's probably not going to be heard too well in the video because I was recording still. Sorry about that. The caveat with that, whenever you add that symmetry to your object in this scenario, and Sydney and I were looking at the same scenario with her shape, and to be honest, we were kind of in the same spot as we were with the swords, that we had a lot of geometry to fix. But once we go back and fix it and apply our symmetry, what we can do, because I'm still in work mode, I'm going to go here to the effect pivot and center to my object. Now every time I apply that symmetry, it's going to be centered off of that center point, which is the actual center point of my completed sword. Does that make sense? Doing that will allow me to go back and fix all this. Because once I fix it, I apply the center, the pivots, I mean, whenever I apply a modifier to an object in 3ds Max, where does it put the actual gizmo? Puts it at the center point of my object. Let's say that again.
Puts it at the center point of your object.
The modifier goes to the center point of the pivot point of my object. So if my pivot point is over here, out in Timbuk 3, and we had that problem with Michaela's model. If I go in here and add my symmetry to this, see what I'm saying? It's putting it in the center of my object, and that's not good. Unless I want to do something like this, then it works. So be very conscientious of it. Center the mass, center to the object, and then I can take I can delete everything off of this, and it'll be very clean and very centered. Then reapply my symmetries, and I'll be good to go. Does that make sense? So at this point, what I want to do is, now that I have it that direction, I'm going to collapse it all, and I'm just going to do the UVs of one corner, and everything will just be easy to separate from there. That covers what we're doing here. All right, so delete all that geometry that has been established and fixed and worked on, and then I go back in here and do the UVs. And the UVs, I'm just going to break off into basic pieces. First off, if it's a rat nest like this, like my hair, flatten the mapping. It kind of gives you an idea where some things are. What we've got here are some triangles and things that we need to create a better solution for, but we got some big chunks out of the way. So the more complex pieces are going to be anything that's round or spherical, right? So I'll probably just go ahead and grab these pieces here, including the bridge and this top one. And let's just go ahead and just kind of put those together. So we'll, oh, we need to break everything. Break it, and then there we go. Now I can start kind of slapping those together one at a time.
Where was break again?
Break is in, I use the right click. It's right there. And it's in, I think, tools. Yeah, it's in tools. All right, so I'm going to grab that edge. What I can do first is just see if I can do a cylindrical mapping off of this. Hit fit. It's perfect. Don't y'all agree? What I'm going to do is move the actual mapping to make it more sense for the actual shape of the object. And I can start rotating to put the seam on one corner. It's turning out messy. That's a start. All right, so I'll just go ahead and from here I'm just going to noodle, noodle, noodle. How do you sign noodle, 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 noodle?
I did this.
That's it. It'd probably be actually easier once you get all your pieces lined up with the symmetry to get to that one, but at this point you can kind of look at it and you know you can select them later when it's all pieces together. This is the problem child right here, isn't it?
The torus?
The torus. One thing you could do, because you can rebuild this torus and kind of do this attachment again, so let the torus UV coordinates that come with the actual primitive set up for you. So like if I were to actually do a torus, just like, because it's a primitive, it's already set up as a box, so it's a little easier to attack. It's not perfect, but it's a torus, so it's not going to be perfect, but you see how at least you got some control over it, right? So you could rebuild that. That's probably what I would do. Just take this, now that I got the UVs, cut the halves out and reattach it to the quarter that I've got. Messier.
Nicer.
takes whatever you have selected and just flattens it.
Just flattens it. That's what I do most of the time right off the bat. Just get it out of the way.
Weird intersection it made. But it's still technically.
So find that vertex and weld it. Right, that's something I can make. That's why I also like doing this with the symmetry and the unwraps, that it kind of shows me where I have screw ups. I screw up a lot, I do. Y'all believe that?
I was wondering if you were talking to me directly.
No, I was talking to Andrew. Now everyone gets to hear it in the video.
Can you do what you just did again? The stitch selected.
Yeah, all I'm doing is clicking on that, so I'll select whatever vertex I want, and stitch selected.
And that stitches the blue.
Because the blue is married
Yeah.
in 3D space, right? So but I want to give it a hand sometimes, because if you let it kind of go nuts, it'll create a little bit of distortion.
Yeah, yeah. Alright.
And actually with this one, I'll just slide this down. I actually would straighten all these pieces out too, because you want to look at it straight on, not from that angle. Does that make sense? And that's kind of where I would head from here. I mean, I think for the most part you can handle the rest. And if I go down into this, collapse it down, there's more than just a few seconds of work. I'm aware of that. I think you are too. But for the most part, I think you're in a better spot than you were when I got it. You definitely got a lower poly mesh scenario going, so it's a little bit more controlled. So
How would you recommend, like, there's a little spot in the middle where it separates, right?
right here.
How would you recommend fixing that?
So I go in here, turn the test tube on, grab that edge.
Could you bridge it?
You could bridge. You can't bridge it because it's in a modifier above it. But I just moved it over. So the overlap is the actual geometry that it's on the actual right side. Let's change this color. So this is the mirrored side. That's the actual symmetry. And this light gold is the cage of the actual original geometry. And so now they're basically occupying more or less the same space. And now they're overlapping with the symmetry markers right there. So they're going to just be welded right there regardless. Does that make sense? And that's why I like about using the symmetry in this regards, because then I can actually kind of get all these pieces cleaned up and hopefully lose a lot of these problem areas in my geometry. So hide that, because we have that geometry right, we have that vertex right there. So I can get here and I can hit control backspace, and if I go to that edge and select it, turn this on, I can kind of place this, scale it, straighten it, and get it cleaner. And I'm going to have it right on that center line every single time. So I go back and add another symmetry to this, put it on the Y, and go through the same scenario. But there's your sword. It's looking pretty good right there. All right. I think you get the modeling concepts. I'm going to let the UV sit right here. I want to post this back into the classroom. You can grab it. So it'll be a fix, and you can go from there. How's that sound? This will help you with, because you got a couple of these weird shapes in here, right? This right here, this little space right here is not, this is, well, no, I'm just saying, like, on your other swords, other weapons that you had in there. They'll have something funky like that in there, right? Well, so now you can address it a little more effectively. Cool. Hit plus.